Gilfus Eldrian, our main character, always dreamed of reaching the peak of martial arts, but deep down he knew was a position he could never truly achieve no matter how much effort he put in. Still, his desperation drove him to pursue a legend passed down through generations, one that spoke of a golden dragon, said to grant immortality itself. After a long and brutal battle, Gilfus managed to slay the dragon and, standing proudly over its corpse, was astonished to see the golden fruit actually existed. Convinced this was his chance, he prepared to eat it, believing it would allow him to finally reach the martial peak. Over the years, he became hailed as the strongest in the world, but decades later he grew old and lay on his deathbed, surrounded by his family, with his eldest son Liam sitting sorrowfully by his side. Noticing his son's grief, Gilfus told him to be strong and accepted that his time had come, even as Liam mourned losing his father just as he had once lost his mother. In his final thoughts, Gilfus reflected bitterly on the fruit of immortality and realized it had been nothing but a false hope, though he took comfort in the life he had lived with his wife and children. Aloud, he claimed he had no regrets, though secretly he wished he had more time to reach martial perfection. Moments later, he passed away, only to suddenly open his eyes again, shocked to see everything around him had changed. His body felt small and light, and when he looked at his hands, he realized they were tiny and delicate, the hands of a baby, as he lay inside a cradle. Trying to stay calm, relying on the discipline of a 10-star warrior from his past life, he pieced together the truth. The fruit he had eaten had never been one of immortality at all, but instead held the mysterious power of reincarnation. This makes him smile, considering it a stroke of better luck, and with this belief, he feels certain he can finally reach the peak of martial arts. As he observes his surroundings, he notices several other babies around him, and since they are all in a separate building, he concludes that he must have been reborn into the dragon family, though he soon begins to wonder why so many infants are gathered in the same room. Suddenly, a group of maids enters carrying feeding bottles, and to his shock, they reach into one of the cradles and pick up a baby goblin to feed it. Giles watches in horror as they pour a red liquid into the creature's mouth, only for it to explode moments later, splattering blood across his face. Terrified and confused, he tries to make sense of what kind of substance could cause such a gruesome reaction, but the maids calmly dilute the liquid and continue distributing it to the other children. While Giles is still lost in thought, one of the maids grabs him and forces the bottle into his mouth. And though he instantly realizes the contents are not milk, he is stunned by the overwhelming magical energy radiating from it. As the taste fills his mouth, he suddenly recognizes the truth. It is ancient dragon's blood, and he is horrified by the insanity of feeding such a dangerous substance to newborns. Now understanding why the maids mentioned diluting it, Giles panics, thinking he should spit it out, but he realizes he has already swallowed a small amount and convinces himself that such a tiny portion will not be fatal. Looking around, he notices other babies spitting out the liquid, and he decides to follow their example before he suffers the same fate as the goblin. Yet just as he makes this choice, a chilling thought strikes him. What if spitting it out is the real mistake? He realizes that if he absorbs all the magical power, he might surpass even his former self and finally reach the peak of martial arts. Though he still has no idea what exactly is happening, he resolves to take full advantage of the situation, and with a determined look, he drinks the contents of the bottle to prove that no one should underestimate him. The maid feeding him is startled to see Gilfus eagerly consuming the dragon's blood, but also relieved that things are turning out in their favor. Once he finishes the entire bottle, he is placed back into his cot, noticing that the other babies have also managed to survive the ordeal. Like any infant after a heavy meal, drowsiness overtakes him, and he drifts into sleep. 7 years later, Gilfus, now known as Zeke Eldrian, is seen honing his strength by balancing a massive boulder on his feet while performing one-handed push-ups. He completes 1,000 repetitions before casually pushing the stone far into the distance. Admiring his muscular body, Zeke admits he enjoys the results, crediting his extraordinary growth to the dragon's blood he consumed as a baby. The blood contained an immense reservoir of power, and even infants who had swallowed only a little became far stronger than ordinary humans. But since Zeke had also absorbed the divine dragon's true source power in his past life, he was able to take in every drop of the ancient dragon's essence and undergo a transformation that even he found unbelievable. Yet despite his enhanced body, Zeke realizes with frustration that he is still only a 1-star warrior, when by all rights he should be at least 4 stars. In this world, a star represents one's true source of power condensed to its very limit, with a body envisioned as a vast universe in which these stars orbit freely. However, advancing through the stages grows increasingly difficult, for with every additional star comes exponentially greater strength. In his past life, Zeke had reached the unprecedented rank of 10 stars, becoming the only person in history to ever achieve such a feat now. 7 years into his new life, as the illegitimate son of the current head of the Dragon family, he lives with the bitter truth that his mother has already passed away and his father has never once acknowledged him, a fact that makes Zeke despise having such a worthless man as his parent. Reincarnated a millennium later, he finds himself in a world where the weak are nothing more than prey for the strong, and where a dangerous ritual known as the Dragon's Trial determines the future of the clan's children. Only those who survive consuming dragon's blood are considered worthy to be trained as dragon warriors. Yet despite passing the trial and consuming every drop, Zeke has not received a shred of training, left instead in the care of silent maids with no instructors in sight. Frustrated, he questions one of the maids, demanding to know why he is being denied combat training, only for her to answer in a mechanical tone that she is not at liberty to say. Angered, Zeke presses further, reminding her of the rules and insisting that those who survive the trial should be molded into warriors, but the maid repeats her hollow response. Even when he tries to pry information about the other children of the main family, she refuses to divulge anything, hiding behind the same words. Though Zeke is strong enough to continue building his body on his own, he cannot ignore the lack of answers, and his irritation grows as he wonders if the only thing the maid is capable of saying is that she is not at liberty to speak. Zeke questions the maid, asking if he is being kept in the house only to be mistreated, but she calmly denies it, explaining that their orders are to tend to his personal needs. Observing her more carefully, Zeke realizes that she is actually a 3-star fighter and could have helped him with combat training, yet she refuses to provide anything useful. Frustrated, he decides it is time to take matters into his own hands and head into the forest, annoyed that he has lived with this maid for 3 years without forming any real bond or gaining anything of value from her. Expecting a reply but receiving only silence, he leaves while she pointedly ignores him. In the forest, Zeke begins consuming poisonous herbs despite their bitter taste, considering it part of his training regimen. As he does, he becomes aware of a faint presence trailing him, a figure cloaked in a strange black mist, something entirely unfamiliar to him, as it never existed in his past life. Choosing to ignore it, he focuses instead on the massive, furious boar blocking his path. When the beast charges, Zeke smiles, takes the perfect stance, and easily sidesteps before striking its gut with a single punch, the impact so devastating it shatters the boar's insides and kills it instantly. Shocked by the power of his own strike, Zeke concludes that true strength lies not in the number of stars one possesses, but in their quality. Slinging the boar over his shoulder, he heads home, musing that he is tired of isolation and longs for adventure, though he knows the sea may be his only path outward. Meanwhile, the mysterious figure who has been trailing him watches in disbelief, not only at how Zeke effortlessly dispatched the boar with a single blow despite lacking formal training, but also at how the boy detected his hidden presence. Considering that Zeke's mother died young and his father showed no interest in him, the observer cannot fathom how Zeke could possess such awareness or power. Yet as the illegitimate son of the family head, Zeke is not free to roam and must remain under surveillance. Intrigued, the Hidden Watcher concludes that this boy is far from ordinary, and the situation is becoming more fascinating with each passing day. When Zeke returns home, he immediately notices unfamiliar visitors inside and can sense the weight of their strength, leaving him to wonder what they could possibly want from him. Quietly approaching the door, he listens in on their conversation, and though he feels no killing intent, his curiosity only grows. Finally stepping inside, he sees several men bearing the Dragon family emblem on their clothes, which makes him even more suspicious. When he asks their purpose, they inform him that they have come to take him for an examination. Zeke is stunned, nearly losing his composure, since no one had ever mentioned anything about such a test. Before long, he is escorted to the main house, a place he never thought he would see again after 1,000 years away. The men dress him in a school uniform, and Zeke quickly realizes that he hasn't been summoned for comfort or luxury, but to be enrolled in the Dragon's Nest Academy. The prestigious school founded by the Dragon family where every child of the clan is sent at the age of 7 to receive formal education. Today happens to be the entrance examination, but unlike the others, Zeke never received any preparation or education, leaving him frustrated yet with no choice but to comply, as the test is mandatory. Overwhelmed, he lowers his head in irritation while other students stride past him with confidence. Among them, a timid-looking boy with blue hair named Langus, hailing from Old Scale Village, pauses to ask if Zeke is all right or in some sort of trouble. Zeke, however, turns to him with a glare and snaps back harshly, demanding to know what he wants, to which Langus nervously replies that he was only trying to help, since Zeke looked troubled. Zeke is taken aback by Langus' timid approach, sensing immediately that he is a shy type, yet he can also feel a faint but steady power flowing within him. Realizing he had been too harsh, Zeke stands up, apologizes for his rudeness, and introduces himself, explaining that his sharp tone came only from confusion over what the family heads intend to put them through. Langus reassures him that the examination's content rarely changes from year to year, but Zeke quickly admits that he has absolutely no idea what the exam even involves. Stunned, Langus stares at him in disbelief, realizing the boy in front of him truly has zero knowledge of what he is about to face, and for a moment he wonders if Zeke will even be able to handle it. Deciding to help, Langus prepares to explain the basics of the test, but before he can say anything, a group of older boys stride up behind them, sneering and calling Langus a runt. Even Zeke is surprised to hear someone address him so harshly. The group is led by Retin, another boy from Old Scale Village, who immediately starts mocking Langus, taunting him for daring to show up at the examination. Retin jeers, asking why a weakling like him didn't just stay home and waste his time playing instead of embarrassing himself here. Still too naive to fully recognize the insult, Langus simply replies that he came for the examination, which only makes Retin erupt in laughter before shouting angrily that Langus is nothing but trash and that someone like him will never be accepted into the Dragon's Nest Academy. Retin continues mocking, turning his insults towards Zeke as he sneers that his father is nothing more than a mock dragon. Zeke quickly notices Langus clenching his fists in anger, clearly stung by the insult, and he recalls the dragon family's strict hierarchy. At the very bottom are the mock dragons, those considered failures for either not entering the dragon's nest or failing to graduate, scorned as fakes. Above them are the rookies called lesser dragons, then the young dragons who serve as common soldiers, the adult dragons who command as captains, and finally the elder dragons, the powerful executives who stand at the very top under the absolute monarch. Though mocked as trash, Langus clearly longs to prove that not all so-called fakes deserve the label. Deciding to step in, Zeke calmly asks Retin how he can call Langus trash when he has yet to even take the examination. Stunned by the interruption, Retin demands to know who Zeke is and whether he has a problem with him. Zeke shrugs it off, saying he has no quarrel, but genuinely wants to understand why Retin believes Langus could never pass. Retin sneers that weaklings like Langus simply don't belong, but Zeke bluntly retorts that Langus is far stronger than Retin and his whole gang of nobodies. The insult immediately enrages Retin, who growls in disbelief and asks if Zeke is suggesting that he and his crew are beneath someone like Langus. Just as the tension is about to erupt into a fight, an examiner suddenly arrives, his sharp voice silencing the crowd as he announces that the entrance examination is about to begin, instructing all applicants to proceed with registration and collect a numbered tag. Retin glares at Zeke with pure disgust, vowing to remember his face, which makes Zeke raise an eyebrow in surprise, wondering why the youth of this era are so short-tempered. Langus, startled by the remark, reminds him that they are all the same age and adds that anyone would naturally get angry if they were called weak. Curious, Zeke asks if the examination is mandatory, but Langus explains that he could withdraw if he felt unqualified to take part, a revelation that surprises Zeke and further confirms to Langus just how clueless he really is. Concerned, Langus advises him to back out before he gets hurt, but Zeke confidently insists that he has no intention of withdrawing, which leaves Langus both shocked and impressed at his unwavering confidence despite his ignorance of the test. Zeke then suggests they head over before the exam begins, and soon all the applicants gather together as the examiner steps forward to announce the rules. He explains that the task is simple. Each participant must leave even the smallest scratch on a massive rock before them in order to pass, and while they are forbidden to use outside weapons, they may use the ones provided, or even their bare hands, if they so wish. Each applicant is granted 3 attempts. To Zeke, it sounds almost laughably easy, and he frowns in disappointment, having expected something far more grueling given the brutal dragon blood trial they endured as infants. Langus, however, is horrified by the challenge, a reaction that Zeke cannot quite understand. The examination begins, and the first boy steps forward with determination, slashing at the rock with all his might. The result is catastrophic. His sword shatters instantly, releasing a deafening bang that echoes across the grounds, leaving the boy trembling in pain, yet unable to leave so much as a scratch. Collapsing to the ground, he is asked if he wishes to use his remaining 2 attempts, but writhing in agony, he is in no condition to continue. The examiners declare the fallen boy's attempt to forfeit, and he is quickly carried away. Zeke notices that Langus is acting strangely and wonders why, since the trial looks almost insultingly simple to him. Curious, he asks about the rock, and Langus explains in a hushed tone that it is called the Regeneration Stone, a mystical object that instantly repairs even the tiniest scratch and reflects brute force 100-fold, a fact that makes Zeke realize just how outrageous it is. Langus then adds that success depends not on sheer strength, but on properly circulating one's ether source power, and from this Zeke deduces that many applicants should, in theory, pass. Yet as he listens, one after another fails, their arms broken from reckless attempts, though he notes that Retin and his lackeys are strong enough to manage. The tension mounts as the examiner calls out number 315, Zeke's number, and Langus urges him to withdraw, but Zeke only smiles and assures him he'll be fine. Rising to his feet, he steps forward with a confidence that makes the examiner's gaze sharpen as if sensing something dangerous. When asked to choose a weapon, Zeke shakes his head, saying his fists are enough, and though the examiner presses him, his answer does not change. Laughter erupts from the students who mock him, and even Langus despairs, believing Zeke's arms will be torn apart, blaming himself for not stopping him. Yet Zeke, unbothered, steps up to the monolithic stone with calm composure, and seeing that his resolve will not waver, the examiner finally gives the signal for him to proceed. Zeke examines the strange rock, and admits it is composed of a mineral he has never encountered before, likely something that formed in the 1,000 years since his past life. Realizing there are countless things he has yet to understand, he decides to set those questions aside for later and focuses on the task at hand. Channeling his strength, he prepares to unleash a blow he believes sufficient for the challenge, opting to use the Dragon Slayer combat technique. A brilliant yellow aura envelopes his body and arm as he strikes the stone with immense force, shattering its top with a deafening crash and filling the area with dust. While most of the crowd shields their eyes, the examiner watches intently without flinching, as if recognizing the significance of the display. Zeke exhales heavily, noting the technique is still too advanced for him at his current age. Inspecting his arm, he finds it bleeding, with his uniform torn from the impact. Rather than boasting about his success, he humbly concludes that his training remains insufficient. The gathered students are stunned, unable to fathom how he accomplished it, while Retin seethes with anger at Zeke's victory. Langus is left speechless, unable to believe Zeke of all people passed, and even the examiner silently acknowledges the impossibility of what he witnessed, since only a 4-star or higher should be capable of damaging the Regeneration Stone. Troubled, the examiner wonders if Zeke inherited hidden power from his lineage, and he can't shake the feeling that he has seen the technique Zeke used somewhere before. Zeke walked up to the examiner and asked how he had done in the test. The examiner told him he had passed and gave him a bottle filled with a green substance. When Zeke asked the junior examiner about it, the man only glared at him with hatred and told him to move aside, so Zeke assumed it was a reward for passing. He went back to his new friend, and Langus praised his performance. Zeke then asked about the bottle, and Langus explained that it was a healing potion, though only a normal grade one. Zeke examined it again, realizing it didn't seem poisonous, and began to suspect it might actually be an elixir, which is made from rare materials, herbs that grow only in hidden realms, and pure cores from divine or phantom beasts. Such an elixir can heal old and fresh wounds instantly, while also boosting ether, but is extremely rare because of the difficulty of finding and refining its ingredients. When Zeke drank the potion, his torn arms healed instantly, leaving him shocked as he realized it was indeed an elixir. Langus, however, said he didn't know what an elixir was and claimed dragon healing potions were simply stronger than shop-bought ones. To him, this was normal, But Zeke was astonished by how quickly his injuries disappeared, though he noticed there was no ether surge like when he consumed an elixir. Langus once again told Zeke he was impressive, though Zeke had trouble believing it. Zeke examines the bottle and realizes it represents the pinnacle of human creation achieved over the past 1,000 years. Langus reminds Zeke that he is already very strong, but Zeke confidently replies that his goal is to become the strongest, so this doesn't surprise him. Soon after, Retin and his group of bullies step forward for their test, and all of them pass, which Zeke had expected from the beginning. Finally, applicant 414 is called, and it turns out to be Langus. As he makes his way down the stairs, Zeke notices his friend's nervousness and encourages him to stay calm, assuring him that he will do fine. Langus, however, turns back and tells Zeke to stop setting such high standards for him. When he arrives at the test site, Langus picks up a sword, leaving Zeke to wonder what exactly he is trying to do. Taking a deep breath, Langus swings the blade at the rock but fails to leave even a scratch and collapses from the effort. The examiner reminds him he has 2 more attempts, so Langus stands up and tries again, only to get the same result before falling down in tears, afraid he will fail just as his bullies always claimed. As expected, Retin and the others mock him, laughing and jeering that the child of a half-dragon will never be more than half-dragon, and they tell him to give up while reminding Zeke that he had once claimed someone as weak as Langus was still stronger than them. The examiner informs Langus that he has only 1 attempt left and asks if he wants to continue. But Langus begins to stutter as he sinks into a state of darkness. In that moment, Zeke's voice cuts through, asking what he is doing, and when Langus turns in confusion, Zeke advises him to use a spear instead of sword. Though puzzled, Langus listens as Zeke insists he means it, scolding him for wielding a weapon that doesn't suit him and assuring him that no matter how many tries he takes, the sword will never make a dent in the rock. Retin and his gang laugh again, mocking Zeke's suggestion, pointing out that Langus was trained with a sword since childhood and never touched a spear, convinced he will remain pathetic regardless. Zeke then asks the examiner if changing weapons mid-test is allowed, and upon being told it is, he smiles at Langus, encouraging him to try the spear. Speaking like a true motivator, Zeke challenges him, asking if he is ready to walk away as a loser, and Langus firmly replies no. Rising to his feet, Langus declares he will follow Zeke's advice and attempt the spear, recalling how his father, who was never permitted to enter the dragon's nest and endured constant ridicule, never gave up and still raised him with determination. Inspired by his father's perseverance, Langus resolves to prove he is not weak, remembering Zeke's words that a sword would never work no matter how many times he tried. Though he has not known Zeke long, he chooses to place his trust in him, even if he's uncertain how to use a spear, and Zeke simply instructs him to thrust straight without overthinking, urging him to just do it. Langus knows it is nearly impossible for someone wielding a spear for the first time to strike the regeneration stone and cause damage, but he also realizes he will never know unless he tries. Though he has only just met Zeke, he decides to trust him, wanting to return the same faith Zeke has shown in him. Taking his stance, Langus notices that the ether energy flowing through his body feels different from when he held a sword. He charges at the stone and thrusts, unleashing a massive shockwave. Retin and his gang burst into laughter, mocking that nothing has changed despite the weapon switch. But their laughter fades when they notice Langus has actually pierced the stone. Shock spreads through the crowd, even the examiner struggling to believe what he is seeing. Zeke beams with pride and applauds Langus, who himself can hardly believe his eyes when the examiner notes his success in the record book. Still in disbelief, Langus asks again to confirm, but Zeke hugs him from behind, assuring him that he truly did it. Overwhelmed with joy and tears, Langus hugs Zeke in return. Retin and his boys refuse to accept the result, claiming it must be pure luck. The examiner then raises his voice, announcing the end of the exam and declaring that the entrance ceremony is next. This surprises Zeke, who can't believe scratching the rock is the only requirement. But Langus explains there may be another test once they officially enter the academy. Curious, Zeke asks what happens now that they have passed, and Langus tells him that the heads of the dragon family will arrive to give their congratulatory words. At that moment, a group of aura-wielding men approaches from a distance, and among them is one figure who immediately draws Zeke's attention, prompting him to ask Langus who the gloomy man is. Langus is stunned that Zeke would openly trash-talk the family head, but Zeke doesn't hold back, even calling him an ugly man before Langus quickly covers his mouth, begging him to stay quiet. Though reluctant, Zeke decides not to push further and instead observes the men recognized as the Ragan family's forces. He is impressed to see several six-star warriors among them, but the family head, Balsa Elragon, stands out as an 8-star warrior, a rarity in Zeke's time, leaving him to wonder how many such powerful individuals remain in the world. Zeke admits to Langus that he dislikes Balsa and doesn't care whether the man is his father or not. Soon, Balsa steps forward, radiating an overwhelming aura, and addresses the students with only a few words, telling them to become the flesh and blood of the Ragan. His short speech carries a crushing pressure that makes nearly all the students tremble, with even Langus struggling to breathe, though Zeke feels nothing but deep, inexplicable hatred toward him. After Balsa leaves, another elder steps forward to speak on his behalf, encouraging the students and saying that the family head expects great things from them. This elder, with his blonde hair, immediately captures Zeke's curiosity. With Balsa gone, the suffocating tension eases somewhat, yet the students remain unsettled in the aftermath of his presence. Finally, the examiner steps forward to announce the dormitory assignments, shocking Zeke, who had assumed they would all be sent to the same place. Langus decides to explain things to Zeke, since he knows nothing about the academy. He tells him that there are 4 dorms, east, west, north, and south, and every student is assigned to one of them. Not long after, Zeke hears his name called, and he stands to leave, telling his new friend to take care of himself. They exchange a few words before parting ways, and Zeke learns he has been assigned to the academy's east dorm. As he makes his way there, he is struck by how much has changed in the 1,000 years since his time. Following the directions written on the note in his hand, he tries to navigate to his room, though he worries his roommate will be angry that he is arriving late after getting lost. At last, he reaches the door, and with eager excitement, he opens it, ready to greet his new roommate with a cheerful introduction. But the enthusiasm instantly fades the moment he sees who